Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have April Francis Federico. We'll be discussing her wonderful poetry book, The Disappearing Act, Journey of How a Poetess Grew Up Within a Matter of 5 Years. Available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But guys, listen, even though you can't purchase the book here, you're really going to want to check out April's blog so you can gather more information on everything she has in store. And that's theaprildiaries.blog. There, as I said, you'll find more information about her. You'll find more information about the blog that she keeps up, and hopefully be able to get this in addition to her poetry book and really develop a closer relationship with April herself. So one more time, that's theaprildiaries.blog. And I will say that April was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business. Author Flex Media Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, make sure you're doing yourself a favor and you're contacting Author Flex. You can find out more information on them at authorflexmedia.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in because April is the expert. She's written the book, she's pulling from her experience, and she's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. April, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing so wonderful. How are you?
I am very well. Thank you very much for asking, and it truly is a pleasure. And I meant everything that I said. I mean, the words of wisdom that we're going to be able to receive from you, and yeah, listen, we may not be able to relate to everything that you discuss, but I promise we're going to be able to take so much and add it into our day-to-day lives and really learn and grow and develop because of that. So this is truly a treat for myself, as I know it's going to be for my listening audience. So April, thank you very much again for being a guest with us. And before we go into the book, let's hold off slightly. April, start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Sure. So to start off, it's weird being on the other side of an interview because I am a journalist and and as well as I am, I am self-proclaimed social content guru, and by that I mean I love using social media, and I'm also an editor, but now my official title is content strategist, author, and content creator.
That's a long title. All right, let's start there first and foremost.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I completely understand. It's a different experience, right? When the tables are turned, because I've been doing this now for years and thousands of people that I've interviewed, and whenever I have a situation, I mean, it's been years since I've been on the opposite side of things, but I remember years ago and being on the opposite side, when I was maybe applying for jobs or whatever the case may be, and I prefer being in control of the interview and not being on the opposite side of things, receiving the questions. So I can adhere to what you're saying. It is a different experience, and we're going to try to make it as pleasurable as possible because today is all about you, April. We're celebrating the work that you've comprised and put forth, and we're really looking forward to this book of poetry. So, April, thank you for sharing that. Nothing but continued success for you in all of your endeavors. And without further ado, The Disappearing Act. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Sure. So it's funny when I look back on 2020 when I wrote this book, and then 5 years before that, in 2015, I had graduated from high school. And since then, I had my first serious relationship in college. And then I made a lot of new friends along the way, been through one major after another. And I should probably start off by saying that I went into college wanting to be an oncology doctor, so a cancer doctor,
Mm-hmm.
because my dad had cancer and I was volunteering at Tufts Medical Center. And I should also say that I was born and raised in Massachusetts. Um, so, yeah, and I live in Rhode Island now. So, big switch, but love it here in Rhode Island. Anyway, finally, I chose the English and creative writing route, and I had made the bold decision to transfer colleges because I was so desperate to start a new life for myself. And now that it's 2022 and I'm looking back on the year 2017, that's the year I was hospitalized with PTSD. And
Wow.
it was that period of time where I was just so uncertain of where I was going to go from there. But I knew that it didn't define me. And it's almost in divine timing because last month on Valentine's Day, I was hospitalized with diabetic ketoacidosis. And that was when I found out I am indeed diabetic. So
Wow.
you could say my whole life is a journey at that.
Yeah, of course.
So it's really just a continuing journey from, 2015.
April, so many things to unpack there. I mean, the first thing that absolutely resonates with me, as I'm sure it does with all my listening audience and everybody that picks up your book. Listen, our journey is filled with hills and valleys, right? And I know when you're initially growing up, because I remember, and it seems like an eternity ago that I was in high school and, I was a teenager. It was, oh my goodness, time flies. But, I remember everything when I was younger. Life was so much easier. And of course I had my own obstacles that I was going through, but nothing in comparison to when I became an adult. And especially since moving to Southern California. And so life's journey is constantly filled with hills and valleys and filled with so much adversity. And when you get to a certain point in your life, you just kind of start to understand that and you're able to roll with the punches, but by no means does it ever cease. I think you just start to get better at how to interpret the obstacles in front and really how to roll with those punches, right? And know what to expect and know how to deal with the brunt, the force of the things hitting you. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And, April, I'm going to take a quick second to really commend you on what you've done here, because I think so much of where the power in your book lies is, again, as I stated when we first started this interview, your poetry may have derived from personal experiences. But what you've been able to do, because it very easily could have just stayed a personal thing that you utilized for yourself, and it was a cathartic experience for you to go through. And that in and of itself would have been so valuable to you. But you didn't stop there, right? You took it a step further and you put the book out for the public. Now, there's a question that I'm going to follow up with, but first and foremost, when I talk about you needing to be commended, we know that sometimes, again, in those hills and valleys, it is difficult enough for us to look into the mirror and acknowledge certain things about ourselves that we may not necessarily like, or we may not necessarily be proud of or happy with. But for you to take it a step further and turn that mirror into a window of sorts for other people to view inside and really see you at such vulnerable moments, I think is so commendable, because the courage that it requires for you to do that is something that I don't know if I could do. And I'm an actor and a filmmaker based here in Los Angeles. That's what brought me out, and that's my main thing. But, it's easy to put on a disguise for someone else. It's not so easy when you're showcasing yourself to the world. And I really think that's so commendable. And the question that I want to follow up with is inspiration. I mean, April, what inspired you to embark upon that journey and put this out for the public?
It was really a matter of the power that I had in my voice. That I rediscovered after I got out of this relationship that I was in college. And And I mean, my personal philosophy is that you can, stand in the mirror long enough. And this is kind of a quote from High School Musical too, but, so judge me, but, you could stand in the mirror long enough to check the damage that will always be left behind you. But that's the quote right there. But to me, I took that damage and I turned to a metaphorical window, and I basically call it the defenestration of all that I once was, but am not anymore.
Absolutely beautiful. April, sticking with the concept of inspiration, but diverting it slightly with regards to poetry, were you someone that always loved poetry growing up? Were there certain poets that inspired you? Where does that love for poetry come from? Because we know from your description, creative writing was something that you were interested in. But where does poetry fit into all of this?
Yeah, that's so funny that you asked that, because I've been writing since I could pick up a pen, so ballpark that's like 8 years old. And I would always ask my mom to buy me journals from those Scholastic book orders that you would get in school.
I remember those.
And yeah, good times. And I think that poetry actually came to me in 5th grade when we had a poetry unit. And I just remember my elementary school teachers in general saying, April loves to write. And in fact, my 2nd grade teacher actually used that as an example for one of our spelling words, which I think was the word write. And anyway, in 5th grade, I picked up one of our textbooks, and one of our literature textbooks, and I completely fell in love with Maya Angelou's I Love the Look of Words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that poem distinctively. I mean, I couldn't recite it even if you held a gun up to my head, but I just remember that poem and thinking, I have to read more Maya Angelou. I need to know more about her. And this only inspired me to not only research inspiration, but also to write more. And it wasn't until, I think it was high school, that I got often discouraged by teachers for, not having proper grammar, or just not having the voice that they wanted to, read in essays and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, I have a unique voice, and we all do, and you shouldn't be afraid to, use it. And I mean, regardless of what people think. Mm-hmm. And because in reality, it's your story, it's your perspective. Absolutely. No matter if you're writing an essay, no matter if you're writing a blog post like I do on a semi-daily basis, and or even in poetry, because poetry is made to stand on its own, and you shouldn't really have to explain yourself.
Again, here on the line with April Francis Federico. We're discussing her wonderful poetry book, The Disappearing Act, available for purchase through Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, but make sure you're checking out her blog, theaprildiaries.blog. April, next question that I'd love to go into, and listen, my listening audience is going to get very upset with me if I don't hurry up and ask, okay? So let's just move right in this direction. So we know that this is a poetry book, right? So it's of course a collection of poems that you have written over the years. Well, April, if you have one readily available, we would love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah, so one I have up right now is called Anniversaries, and this is one of the first poems I've written when I was at Roger Williams University for my undergraduate degree. Okay, so here it goes. Anniversaries. Funny when you start to think about, and I blame it on Mercury's retrograding, the anniversaries I no longer wish to celebrate. And I blame it on Mercury's retrograding. People and events of our past just come again. I no longer wish to celebrate the 10 days I couldn't even go outside. People and events of our past just come again. To play, to laugh, to rejoice in making our lives utterly miserable. The 10 days I couldn't even go outside can't even compare to those who became cancer-free. To play, to laugh, to rejoice in making our lives utterly miserable is unfortunately what we live for, but they can't even compare to those who became cancer-free on this time last year or whatever. Is unfortunately what we live for, but they can't take away the happiness and joy. I got to know my best friend on this time last year, whatever. Funny when it sometimes doesn't even faze you anymore, but it can't take away the happiness and the joy. I got to know my best friend that sizzling summer day in July in Gettysburg. Funny when it sometimes doesn't even faze you anymore, but it still somewhat haunts me. That sizzling summer day in July in Gettysburg, also where the story of us began, it still somewhat haunts me, just like high school. Also, where the story of us began, it was also the deterioration, just like high school. I've graduated beyond that at this point in time. Was also the deterioration the beginning of the crumbling of my sanity? I've graduated beyond that at this point in time, as the anniversaries of everything come and go once a year.
First and foremost, a beautiful poem. Hey, I love the fact
Thank
that you
you.
started it off. You're welcome. You're very welcome. I love the fact that you started off with a bit of a humorous tone with Mercury in retrograde, right? Which, guys, can we just stop for a second and acknowledge I still don't fully understand what that means, but so many people have given me varying degrees and varying explanations for it. I just know that apparently, Mercury in retrograde messes with people's emotions and feelings and something like that. But I love the fact that you went there because, again, so many people know about it, but at least in circles that I'm in, nobody's ever been able to officially articulate it. So it's really kind of humorous that you started there and used that as a blaming tool, right? But also, guys, just anniversaries, and you eventually got into it, but at first you're just talking about anniversaries, and listen, sometimes they're great, sometimes they're fun, sometimes they're annoying, and the people that are around, and because it wasn't specified in terms of exactly what type of anniversary we were talking about, it left it open-ended. Now, again, I know you ultimately got there, but so many of the things that you were saying resonate because, again, when you had left it open-ended that way, it forces us to think about anniversaries that we've gone through, whether it's a friendship anniversary or, you're celebrating an anniversary for a relative or your particular anniversary with a significant other. It forces you to then go through your Rolodex of memories and think about your anniversaries that you've been a part of. And I love that because, again, guys, as I stated when we first started the interview, you may not be able to relate to every single thing that she says, but I promise you've been through an anniversary. Again, whether it's a significant other, a friendship, family member, it doesn't matter. I promise you can all relate to something with regards to that, and then it brings you down memory lane. And because of that, the bridge is now formulated. So there's so much value there, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, it causes you to reflect. So wonderfully well put. April, I'm curious with this next question here. What would you say was a highlight for you in either writing this book or the journey, whether it's through writing the poems over the years, getting the book published? Talk to our listening audience about either what surprised you or what was one of the highlights for you in this entire process?
I definitely have to say one of the highlights is getting to say that, I'm a current master's student, and I already had like 2 books out at that point. And just to be able to say even that is an accomplishment all on its own. And the truth is, other people don't get to define your success. There's so many ways to define it, but the truth is we all have our own. And that's often come up in like therapy sessions and, issues when I feel like comparing myself to other people and their success. But really, it's just the fact that, I get to say that I'm a published author. And that's something I was willing to say since I was at least 8 years old, when my goal was to publish a book.
I told you, this interview is filled with wisdom, right? You get to define what your interpretation of success is. And I think when you figure that out, that it's not about measuring yourself to other people, it's such a liberating experience. Now, I do think that comes with age and that comes with experience, because that in and of itself is something that can easily resonate, because I know that I've been there. And I remember being in my teens and I remember being in my 20s and comparing myself constantly to those around me, either in my circle or in my career field at the time. And it wasn't until, I got to my mid-30s that it really was like, oh, yeah, I don't have to compare myself to other people. I don't want to compare myself to other people. And I don't care about what other people are doing, because what I am embarking upon, the journey that I am taking, is successful in my definition of what success means for me. And I think that is such a wonderful piece of advice there. Guys, a gift that just keeps on giving. Okay. Listen, I could sit here and I could talk to April for hours. A, I'm just that engulfed in what we're talking about. But B, the book that she's written has that much to offer. Now, for the sake of this interview, for the sake of my listening audience, I'm not going to do that to y'all. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start to tie this down, because you guys know what you have to do. I mentioned it before. I'll say it again. Amazon and Barnes & Noble are the places you have to go. I truly mean it. You have to purchase the book yourself, because that's the only way to gather all of the information to truly embark upon the journey that she has set forth. But as we close out, April, I can think of no better way to close out a wonderful interview as this than with another one of your poems. So if you have a second one readily available,
Sure.
Myself, my listening audience, we are all ears.
Of course. Oh my goodness. How about this one? There's no the end for this princess. April, you need a hobby other than writing. April, that dress doesn't look good on you. Belittling. That's all society ever does. I am a Cinderella belaboring upon my own sanity, trying to figure out what I'm doing with my free time other than beat myself up. But does anyone ever really know who they are? For years now, I have been writing, trying to find the words that gallantly describe my life story, wondering who will willingly hear and read my words and say, I can relate. I am not dreaming of being a trophy wife. I just want to make kilograms worth of dollars and to be that artist, not some lame stay-at-home mom. I only want to be a mother to a puppy. No kids for me. Oh, but at the same time, I want my fairy tale husband, but not someone who primarily wants sex, but someone who treats me like the queen, upgraded from the princess my dad always referred to me as when I was a small little mermaid, who didn't, to this day, want a the end, but to actually go to school, studying under the umbrella of journalism, creative writing, and publishing. Very ambitious indeed on my part, as I'm already on my way to living in New York, as I walk across that stage, thanking God I didn't have to memorize xenon, radon, and all that crap that I thought was so elegant my junior year of high school, yammering away about what I thought my future would look like at Harvard with zero thought of what the crystal ball would realistically display.
I love it. Listen, again, filled with so many points that we've all been there. I feel like with each new chapter in your life that you go through, you start to redefine yourself. Will you ever get to the point where you truly know, who you are? I don't know. That's very subjective, and that's tough to answer, because I think there's moments where you feel like you do, and then something happens where it completely throws you off, and you're back to square one. And as I said, with each transition in life, at least in my experience, I am vastly different from the person that I was when I was a teenager. And again, with each chapter, there's been new developments, and I've constantly shaped and developed myself into the person that I am today. But is this ultimately going to be the person that I am at 50? I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. That's really interesting, and I love the fact that you chose that to close out on, because, again, it gets back to what we were discussing. Listen, society is going to put pressure on you. Society is going to try to put titles on you. At the end of the day, it's your life. It's your journey that you're traveling on, and you get to define it. I love the fact that you ended there. Guys, listen, if this interview hasn't moved you, pinch yourself. I don't know what's going on, okay? Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com are the places you have to go. The AprilDiaries.blog is her blog to gather more information on what she has going on. And The Disappearing Act is the title you have to pick up by April Francis Federico. You surely would not be disappointed. Make sure you're heading on over there. You're picking up copies, a wonderful book to have on your shelf any given day, but especially given what we've all gone through, and an even better gift for you to get for someone else. So make sure you're doing yourself a favor and you're heading on over there and picking up your copies today. April, this has been an absolute pleasure, such an honor. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Thank you so much.